Stay on Topic, episode 14 and a half. Coming at you. If you want to introduce a topic to the show, email us at stayontopic111@gmail.com. Reach out to me on Twitter at Giltastrophe, or reach out to James
at PostJam9
or Bob
at Bob Ricotta.
And to my left is the president of the Upstate New York Almost Famous Fan Club and author of a lot of Penny Lane fan fiction, Bob Ricotta.
Can you blame me? I mean,
No.
Kate Hudson.
In that movie,
Yeah,
almost a perfect movie.
it is. And, you know, I hesitate to use the word art, but it is, I think it's a work of art.
It is. It's fantastic. And to your left, somebody who should feel a tremendous amount of shame for never having seen it, James Post.
I may have been reading a book when that movie was on. I don't know.
You're old school.
And I am Chris Gill, and I will not be getting a VR headset despite what Sony wants me to do. So this was an oddly busy week of news and notes and things that happened.
Yeah, not a lot of big stuff, but a lot of little stuff.
Yeah. Bill Cosby's sexual assault trial ended in a mistrial. The judge said the jury was, quote, hopelessly deadlocked. Cosby spokesperson said that the power is back and that Gloria Allred should go back to law school. So did you guys rush out and buy Jell-O pudding pops guilt-free after the verdict came down?
Not so much.
No. Nope. In Le Mans, France, the factory-backed Porsche 919 made a historic comeback, retaking the lead in the last hour of the race after being 13 laps down in 56th position.
Yeah.
Stunning comeback.
And then there were the Corvettes.
Yeah. Well, all the GTs were spraying pea gravel all over the damn place and making life hell for everybody. They had to run a full course caution on an 8-mile long racetrack to clean pea gravel. They're going to have to address that before next year's running. Also, Lynn Patton. Anyone know her?
I do not.
She has been nominated to lead the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Her most recent job is wedding planner for Eric Trump.
I can see the correlation.
Yep. No experience in housing whatsoever. She's just an event planner for the Trump family, and she's being nominated to head a pretty damn important arm of the government.
But if you're looking for urban development, what says urban development more than ice swan sculptures?
Of course, the week was really overshadowed by the gun attack on GOP congressmen who were practicing for a baseball game. Representative Steve Scalise was upgraded to serious condition yesterday. By the way, this is being recorded on Sunday, the 18th. So that's fantastic news. It's fantastic that thing wasn't a bloodbath, because
Yeah.
the security detail assigned to Scalise, who's the third-ranking member of the House, they responded in...
And his presence was the only reason there was a security detail.
Yes. One shudders to think what might have happened if he didn't have that security detail.
Yeah.
Everyone made it out alive somehow, and thank God for that. But this is super disturbing. It's only, 6 years removed from Gabby Gifford's assassination attempt. We're back to a point where we're so divisive that we're trying to carry out assassination attempts on lawmakers.
Well, and
That's scary as hell.
And so divided that we couldn't unite around this for more than about a day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's... And I think everybody sitting at this table is guilty of it, and certainly people at large are guilty of making their opinions putting way too much weight on their opinions and demonizing people. I mean, these are, husbands and mothers and fathers and sons and daughters that are on a madman's hit list. The assailant that, I'm not even going to say his name. He doesn't...
No.
He had a hit list of GOP lawmakers he wanted to take out, and Scalise was on that list.
But it is sad that we can't just assume that, despite the fact that his targets were Republicans, that liberals in general are against mass murder. That I saw so many people on Twitter having to dissociate themselves from this maniac. And I know it's ironic in a way because the same thing I'm sure has happened to a lot of conservatives.
Yes. Yeah.
Who felt like they've been put in the position of, I don't agree with, crazy separatists. I don't agree with, I'm just a conservative. And so I guess liberals are finally getting a taste of what that feels like.
Yeah, they've not been put in this position often, or certainly not on the scale that I can remember.
And I don't want to be too, I don't want to commit the no true Scotsman fallacy, but it is odd to see someone who's so liberal that they were so angry about Bernie Sanders not being the president that they decided to go out with a semi-automatic rifle and a bunch of ammunition. It's not the kind of thing that we associate with liberalism.
No, certainly not. But
doesn't mean it didn't happen. Obviously, it's very clear from his own statements that was his motivation. I'm not trying to clear anyone. It's just a little bit odd.
It is. It's very odd, and everybody needs to tone their shit down. Everyone really needs to just take a step back before you say, tweet, or publish anything, and think about what you're saying. These are human beings. These are our countrymen. Yeah, you can question their motives, but don't dehumanize them.
Yeah.
And that's what we've done.
Yeah, we want to, as a liberal, I want to win the argument in the marketplace of ideas, not on the battlefield, the literal battlefield. And maybe we need to change the way we talk. Maybe we shouldn't refer to politics as a battle.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of desensitizes us to the real violence that it can incite.
But at the same time, I also don't want to give too much credit to this guy and make him representative of anything larger. I really think this guy is just a nut job. I don't think he's a nut job that is representative of a movement toward violent actions among liberals as a whole.
Take that away.
Any more than I would say the same thing if it had happened and the parties had been reversed.
It did 6 years ago. That's what I'm saying. We've had 2 assassination attempts, and don't call them murder attempts. They're assassination attempts.
Yeah.
That's scary. That's not the country I grew up in.
Yes, it is.
The last assassination attempt on a politician before Gabby Giffords was Ronald Reagan in 80, 81?
80, yeah.
I mean, that is, and I'm sorry, I'm terrible at math. That's a long time between assassination attempts. The bulk of my life was spent not living under that.
Yeah.
And now we've had 2 in 6 years. That's damn scary. And everybody really needs to take a step back, take a breath, and denounce this kind of thing. Ted Nugent said, at the tender age of 69, my wife has convinced me that I can't use harsh terms. Ted Nugent realizes there's a problem. Everybody needs to realize there's a problem.
Ted Nugent has had a come to Jesus moment.
Yes,
Yeah.
And he was among the worst of making those thinly veiled threats.
I wouldn't even call them veiled.
Yeah.
But
I guess my point is I don't want to draw too direct a line between harsh rhetoric and the line between posting harsh rhetoric to Twitter and going out and buying a weapon, which is not that easy depending on how you go about it and where you live, and a lot of ammunition, which cost a lot of money, and planning an attack and knowing where people are, and there's a big gap in between those two things.
Sure, but
So I don't think we should. I think we should take this as an opportunity to maybe tone back and think about how we talk about people. I don't think we should necessarily look at it causally.
It fuels it. I really believe all that, negative vibes or mojo fuels this kind of thing. If we have a more civil discourse or discussion, people aren't going to be driven to want to do this thing. But when you are listening to, in this guy's case, obviously he was listening to a lot coming from the left, and you're hearing all this venom, it fuels something in you. And if your mind is broken a little, you're going to be like, oh, yeah, of course this is what I should do.
But at the same time, and the rhetoric against Obama when he was first elected and really throughout his time as president,
And it hasn't stopped.
was at least as bad.
Yeah.
In at least in certain circles. And I didn't see the same response in terms of when something bad happened, like Gabby Giffords, that this is because of too much talk. I don't know.
I just think in this hyper partisan atmosphere, it's easy for someone who 20 years ago would have been content to call talk radio and vent that way to just take it to the next level. Because there are so many outlets to vent that if he feels really strongly, he might feel like calling Rachel Maddow or whatever, the liberal equivalent of Rush Limbaugh, calling in is not enough. He has to take action. But I agree with both of you. We've got to remember that these are human beings, and we may disagree with everything that they say and everything they stand for, but they're mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers, and at the end of the day, these may be the people helping us change our tire when we break down on the side of the road. We don't ask our neighbors if they're Republicans before we ask for their,
cup of sugar.
Right. Right. We just help our neighbors out, but I don't know. So every time something like this happens, the other side accuses, one side accuses the other of politicizing a tragedy. So is it time to talk about gun control again? I know this discussion goes nowhere. I know that the NRA is second only to God on the power structure. But, how many people need to get shot before we look at and say, there's a correlation between the availability of guns and people getting shot?
And why it doesn't happen because people are plenty dissatisfied in France and Britain and Italy, and nobody is shooting each other over there over it. It's, our society is really broken.
But I will accept the premise. There is a correlation between the availability of guns and people getting shot. But we choose the wrong time to have this conversation.
Yeah.
When we decide to have it every time it's connected to a mass shooting.
Yeah.
Because
the emotions are at high
and mass shootings are such a minor blip in terms of U.S. gun deaths.
Correct.
Right.
Most U.S. gun deaths, 2/3 are suicides. That's a problem.
But whether
and most of the rest of them are young black men being killed with handguns that wouldn't be covered by most of these, assault rifle bans.
Right.
It's as horrifying as it is to see on TV. Mass shootings with machine guns are the tiniest tip of an iceberg of the actual gun violence problem in this country. And we always have it in the wrong terms because we always do it at those most dramatic moments. And it's not the dramatic cases that take the most lives.
No, but whether you're talking about a suicide or somebody trying to assassinate a House member, the common thing is it's a mental health issue, and we need to address
we absolutely need to address our mental health problems in this country.
In this room.
That too. Just look at my stash. But that's the same thing that a Republican congressman would tell you when you start talking about gun control in the context of mass shootings, is that we should be talking about mental health. That is true. So what I've always wondered is, why can't we then get together on that?
I don't know.
Yeah. Because it costs
even
money.
Even if this leads to no action, it's Newtown or any of these, incredibly horrifying mass shootings that are, frankly, I'll just come out and say it. They're seen as an opportunity by liberals to bring up gun control.
And
whether they're exploiting it or not, they see it as the time to talk about it.
And why wouldn't you use that to try and, if you really believe that there need to be fewer guns or, you should have limited magazines, why wouldn't you use that as an opportunity? I gave up hope after Newtown. When nothing was done after that, I'm like, we're screwed.
When a bunch of kids got killed.
Yeah, a bunch of kids got murdered.
They couldn't even agree on, how to discuss this.
No, I gave up. We're never going to.
But when the left tried to say, okay, now we need to talk about gun control, and the right said, some of them in genuine, honest sincerity, and some of them just deflecting, said, no, we need to talk about mental health. Why doesn't the left come back and say, okay, let's talk about mental health and keep hammering that?
We've discussed
because
this
they don't care as much about that issue as they care about gun control.
And we've discussed it before. Democrats are just bad at politics.
But I think there's a disingenuousness about that.
Healthcare would go nowhere because it costs money. The answer to all our questions is money.
I don't know why why it has to be mutually exclusive, either gun control or mental health.
Well, I'm not saying it has to be mutually exclusive, but if you're going to get nowhere with Republicans on gun control, largely because of where their money comes from, and they're the ones bringing up mental health, then why don't you then follow up with, well, then let's actually do something about mental health if you really think that's the problem?
We know how the script plays out. The Republicans will agree so they look good. And then when it comes time to, okay, so how do we pay for it? Yeah.
You say we know how the script plays out, but it hasn't been tried, is my point.
Yeah, we're giving up before we even try because we think we know how it's going to play out.
Well, this kind of segues perfectly into the hidden healthcare bill.
Yeah.
We do know how this plays out.
No, we don't. Actually, we have no idea how this will play out. I am calling this the Senate's secret plan to fight healthcare cost inflation.
Nice.
Which only 8 West Wing fans will appreciate, but I don't care.
We don't have that many listeners, do we?
No.
Okay.
So the Senate obviously taking up what is going to be called the American Health Care Act, theoretically, bill that came out of the House. We all knew going into the Senate that it was not going to end up being the same bill in probably almost any way as the bill that came out of the House. This is a bill that could see a vote as early as late this week, according to some people on the inside.
Yeah, Mitch McConnell wants them to vote on it before the July 4th recess.
Yeah. And yet, even longtime members of the Senate are telling the press they have no idea what's in this bill. The negotiations are being conducted entirely behind closed doors by a group of 13 senators, all male, and basically the 13 include the leadership, some committee chairs, Ted Cruz, and Mike Lee of Utah. Not going through the committee process at all.
Yeah, and
which is weird for anything of this scale.
Yeah,
It it's especially weird because this is an unpopular bill to begin with. To be going through a secret process with an unpopular bill just seems like it's doomed to fail.
Yeah, and it's because the reality is, if they're not working from the House bill in any way, which is what everybody's been saying, then we've got 13 men behind closed doors essentially rewriting U.S. healthcare policy from scratch and then expecting a vote.
And nobody really knowing what they're in that room writing.
Yeah. And the danger is that setting aside whether the House is going to cotton to any of this, when, they basically just got cut out after what they went through to get a bill through.
Yeah.
There could be, a lack of buy-in from Republican members in the Senate who feel like they weren't given a voice on this. And the Senate majority is razor thin.
Yeah.
They can afford to lose 2. That's it.
From what I've read, the leadership is holding meetings with different senators to see how they get to 50 votes. They're dickering on things like the growth rate for Medicaid spending, the length of Medicaid expansion phase out, that kind of thing. They're seeing what different senators can stomach, and they're just kind of doing math to see how the bill can get to 50 votes at this point. Usually, it takes about 2 weeks for the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, to score something like this, but they're already sending the CBO test balloons, saying, "All right, if we do this, how will it play out?" So that they're kind of doing mini scoring as they go along, so that they can shorten that 2-week window to fit into Mitch McConnell's July 4th goal. And the whole reason that Mitch McConnell wants to have this done by July 4th is so it gets thrown out with the trash.
I was just going to say, this thing gets signed into law at 11:30 p.m. June 30th.
Yes. Yes. And then
is that even possible with something of this size?
Mitch McConnell seems to think it is.
And that seems like it seems like you have to be incredibly naive to think that you could pass healthcare reform and have it ignored by the public because of timing. And if they timed the passage of Obamacare differently, would we not have had 5 years of uproar?
No, but
would people have not have noticed that the whole healthcare system changed because it happened on a holiday weekend?
But the whole secretive nature of the discussions and the negotiations are kind of hamstringing the opposition because they don't know what they're pissed off about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So once this thing is unveiled, the left has a very short window to rally their base.
Yeah, they don't have much time to message on this.
Right. I read in Slate, your favorite source, that during the reconciliation process, senators can offer any number of amendments that they'd like. So they're suggesting that the Democrats can actually filibuster this through the amendment process.
Yeah.
Now, McConnell can put an end to that at some point. All he needs is a majority vote.
Yeah.
But, you have a bill that's put in, that is crafted in secret, and then you end debate to call a vote on an unpopular bill. I don't know how that plays. But I think you're right. I think they're going to fall short of the July 4th deadline. And then they go on recess for how long? When do they come? Is that like...
I'm thinking 2 weeks, but I'd have to check the calendar.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, Vox did a great thing. I emailed you guys the link. They interviewed 8 Republican senators.
Yeah.
To explain the nuts and bolts of what they're trying to fix in the healthcare bill. Not one of them could tell them any details about why they're doing this or what specifically is going to be better for us.
Yeah, and that was what was it was so interesting to read that because the members seemed almost surprised by the question.
Yes, when
you frame it in terms not of how do you want to change policy, or where's the money coming from, or, you know, when are we going to phase out the Medicaid expansion? But how is this bill going to help people? What are we trying to change philosophically in terms of healthcare policy? And how are we accomplishing it in terms of nuts and bolts?
And they were downright befuddled.
And just pretty much across the board blank stares.
Yeah, I want to give the authors and the reporters who asked all the questions, give them a lot of credit. Tara Golsham, Dylan Scott, and Jeff Stein did really good reporting on this.
Yeah.
They weren't obnoxious about it, but they said, no, you're misunderstanding. I want to know the nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not here just
like
getting a
reporter.
soundbite. Yes.
Like what a reporter does.
They did a terrific job with it. And I highly recommend everyone check that out on Vox. It's very telling about what our elected leaders can and can't tell us. Speaking of...
Because I guess what makes that even more interesting is the context. Because, you know, this is the week when the story has been Republican senators don't know what's in the healthcare bill.
Exactly.
You have to pass it to find out what's in it.
But to then,
that's how all bills should work, right?
But then to take it a step further and say, well, you know, you're behind this in principle, even if you're not involved in the negotiations. So what is this bill supposed to do?
Yeah.
I mean, what are you hoping it does?
And speaking of people who can and can't tell us what they know, Jeff Sessions, our Attorney General.
Yeah.
He, not a lot.
No. I mean, it's more telling what he can't say than what he can say.
Yeah.
And, you know, he claimed, not executive privilege, but he claimed that his discussions with President Trump weren't, he couldn't disclose the contents, which he totally can.
That whole conversation about privilege was mind-boggling. And in a sense, maybe it's a sign that I've been too much, you know, inside the Beltway as far as my reading and watching and listening for too long, that his statement about I can't discuss things that are potentially privileged because I want to preserve the right of the White House to assert privilege in the future almost made sense to me. Like, from a legal standpoint, that almost makes sense.
Yeah, and everyone around this thing just started lawyering up last week.
Yeah.
Trump's personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, hired his own counsel.
Yeah.
The vice president hired his own counsel. It's like everybody's starting to lawyer up, which really makes you scratch your head.
And a lot was made of Michael Cohen hiring a lawyer. You know, that was all over Twitter the other day.
Yeah.
You know, lawyer hires his own lawyer. The guy's already been subpoenaed.
Right.
As part of this investigation. He damn well better have a lawyer. Just because you're a lawyer doesn't mean you don't need your own lawyer if you're subject to an investigation. So that was less news than people wanted it to be. Pence hiring a lawyer...
Yeah.
That's a little more substantive.
Yeah, especially when the way this has been framed to the press is Pence is kind of the, oh, shucks, I didn't know anything was going on type.
I was just whittling on the back porch when all this was going on.
With just my wife.
And Pence brought in Richard Cullen, who's former AG, former Attorney General for the state of Virginia, former U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District in Virginia. So not a lawyer you hire out of the Yellow Pages.
Right.
And this is a serious guy he's brought in.
I think the GOP is really missing an opportunity to reframe the argument. This is really a jobs bill for D.C. lawyers.
That is perfect.
Not something I think most Republicans would be incredibly happy with. More trial attorneys.
So what are the odds that Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein has a job at the end of the week?
Ooh, boy, it's not looking good. And his client isn't helping him out.
I don't know how many times I've said this, and it continues to not be true. But seriously, if Trump fires the deputy AG, it's all over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the only reason to do that is to give yourself the freedom to hire to fire the special counsel.
Right.
Which is just an instant replay of
The Saturday Night Massacre.
Saturday night. Yeah. It's an instant replay of Nixon. It's what Nixon did when he wanted to shut down the investigation into Watergate.
He just fired everyone in the DOJ until they found somebody
Somebody who would agree not to investigate, basically.
Yeah.
You're too exposed at this point, man. Like you can't be. Trump is already in a bad place as far as how he looks relative to this investigation. Even if he's not directly related, to any Russian involvement, he's said some things on the record that look bad. And, if you start just firing everyone who's investigating you and the people who connected to you, that's a huge red flag.
And Rosenstein has stood his ground. He said he would not fire Mueller without cause.
Yeah.
Which infuriated Trump.
Yeah.
Who, I think this is one of the questions we started this podcast way back when in February. Who's the grown up in the room?
Still looking.
Who, somebody throw a copy of All the President's Men on Trump's desk or at least read it to him.
But the president himself is undoing everything because
maybe just the movie.
Insert a laugh track.
There are people out there trying desperately to do damage control, and he undoes it with a tweet.
Yeah.
And this is all coming right straight from the top. I think there are plenty of smart people around him. He's just not listening to any of them.
I would like to believe that, but because of the cronyism, because of the people he's brought into his inner circle, I don't know that there's anybody with this kind of experience that he listens to.
Well, the one that, and everybody is really starting to lose their patience with this. Chris Wallace on Fox News grilled Rosenstein, and you're a little surprised to see that happen on Fox News.
Yeah.
He went right after him, and everybody smells a rat. And whether it's Trump or whether it's just Flynn or maybe Sessions, there's a rat somewhere. And there's an awful lot of smoke, and no one knows where the fire is. And you have to ask, is this the tweets and the undoing and chaos, is that intentional? Is he smart enough to
I think we answered this 2 weeks ago. I think we threw out the crazy like a fox hypothesis officially.
Yeah. No, I think he's just being president by the seat of his pants.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, so
that phrase is going to appear in a history book someday. You realize that?
Along with grab him by the...
Oh, God, it may.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Well, it's... Yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah.
College history books, anyway.
Right, yeah. I mean, books will be written about the 2016 campaign, and that phrase will be a pull quote.
Well, remember when
that could be the title.
I'd buy it.
When the LBJ tapes were released?
Sure.
And everyone was just floored by like how he's always talking about his dick. And we don't have to be floored by this stuff anymore because it's coming out on the campaign trail now.
It's a question of, do we think that we're getting the worst of him because he has no filter? Or do we think that there's much worse going on that's still private?
P tapes.
You really think that's still out there?
You're obsessed.
Just like you and Japanese RPGs, I'm obsessed with the P tapes. I think that's hilarious.
You're into your water sports, well, you know.
No, I just think it's hilarious.
Okay.
Not really. Water sports are gross. Yeah, so any other news and notes? I mean, like we said at the top of the show, this week, a lot of little things happened, but nothing.
So I'm just interested to see where this goes. I mean, is it going to be death by 1,000 tweets? When is Mueller going to complete his investigation? What is the next chapter in this saga?
I just saw a quote just half an hour ago or something on Twitter from somebody's reporting with Angus King, who was one of the more bulldog interrogators in the hearings, saying that this investigation is less than 20% complete in his opinion.
Okay. So we're looking at Thanksgiving, Christmas.
Could be.
If we're lucky.
Oh, that would be a present that keeps on giving, wouldn't it? Would it be okay with your wife if we started putting pictures on your wall and connecting them with yarn, just like we're detectives?
I think we should.
I think we should. I mean,
it's not like she uses this room, right?
No.
No. Okay. Cool.
Okay. Cool.
We're totally going to do that. So, Bob, I know you did something really cool just last night.
I did. I saw one of my rock and roll idols, Elvis Costello, in concert at the Canandaigua Performing Arts Center. It is amazing. He was one of the progenitors of punk, although when you think of punk like the Ramones and the Sex Pistols, he certainly doesn't fit that bill. They just didn't know what else to call him at the time.
Yeah, he's one of those rare artists where you can't slot him in anywhere.
Correct.
He's his own animal.
You listen to his music, and some of it is he's more punk in his lyrical content than Three Chords and the Truth kind of punk, like Sid Vicious.
It's about the attitude, not necessarily the tone of the music.
Right. And trying to be purposely uncool and just let the music do the talking. But he put on one heck of a show. And to follow his career trajectory from angry young man to one of the preeminent singer-songwriters of our time, not recently, but he did an album with Burt Bacharach. So
yeah,
that's quite a career arc. But he put on a great show, and
I have to assume the album with Burt Bacharach was probably the low point. But
kind of like Metallica with Lou Reed.
Oh, let's not even. That never happened. That was an alternate timeline.
But if you wanted to draw a comparison, and in a case that's not real, it'd be more like Metallica with Barry Manilow.
Yeah. Well, yeah, okay, yeah.
Oh, I bet James Hetfield could belt out Copacabana.
Now I want to hear that cover. I want to hear that cover.
We're gonna have to go back in time and change the timeline somehow.
Yeah, I'm still working on the time machine.
And then the two of them together on Mandy.
Oh man!
Oh god!
Not a dry eye in the house.
No,
it's a panty dropper.
Yeah. So I'm just past the halfway point of season 5, Orange Is the New Black on Netflix. One of the best television shows on currently. It is just that show is how you do character work. There's nothing else on television quite like it, and I wish this show got more love because it is always so good. Every episode is a hit. Can't wait to see where this season's going.
My wife won't let me watch anything involving women in prison.
Is your last name Pence?
So was it you or James that admonished me about not seeing Black Mirror?
Both.
I watched the first episode this week. If the rest of the season holds up to the first episode, we've got some quality TV.
Better.
Really?
It gets better.
Yeah.
And it's such a great skewed look at society now and how it could morph going into the future.
And for those listeners who aren't familiar, would it be correct to describe it as Twilight Zone for millennials?
It's Twilight Zone for the digital age, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's for millennials. It's certainly for this era.
Okay.
No doubt. Yeah, and it's expertly done. It's fantastic.
And the episodes are
some of it kind of troubling.
In terms of,
I don't know. Sometimes it freaks me out.
oh yeah,
Sure.
it's troubling in all the right ways.
Yeah.
like it's not troubling in like a Batman versus Superman way.
Yeah.
And James, I know you dove into a new game.
I did. And, you already made a crack about Japanese RPGs. So I will point out that I spent my week playing an adventure game from a French developer.
Nice.
Ooh la la.
That obviously did quite well, but I think got ignored by an audience that looks like the people in this room.
Bad old men?
Hey, speak for yourself. I'm just old.
Okay.
Certainly white men, young men, older men in general.
Gamers.
The core demo gamer, I think, wrote this game off because it is a game with a teenaged female protagonist, and it's about the relationship between her and her teenage female best friend, and a lot of high school drama. But it's amazing how dark they're willing to go with it. It's amazing, it's how cruel girls can be to each other.
Yeah.
Compared to, the just hitting each other the way boys might do.
Girls are so much crueler on such a more visceral level than dudes.
And this goes there and beyond.
Sounds like a good time.
But it's also a sci-fi story. It's slight spoilers, I guess, for the first episode of 5, which is actually free on PC, PS4, basically anywhere you can get the game.
Did you ever mention the name of the game?
Life is Strange.
Okay.
I apologize.
I'm not sure that you mentioned it. You pulled a gill.
I did.
So the game is Life is Strange, and it's a download.
Yes.
It's an episodic download.
Yes.
Okay.
But all
so
the
much like
episodes are
the
out
Telltale
now.
games.
Yes.
Okay.
But a lot more. You control your character directly. You take a lot more direct action.
Okay.
A little less storybook.
Mm-hmm.
A little more adventure game mixed with like 90s adventure game as far as puzzles go.
Okay.
And that's kind of where I'm getting to is, and that's where I'm saying spoilers for the first episode, where the main character is in a bathroom, and a man and a woman, she's in the ladies' room, and a man and a woman come in, senior in high school, come in and are having a screaming argument, and the guy all of a sudden pulls a gun and shoots the girl, and the main character, in her shock, reaches out towards them, and time stops. And then she rewinds it till before the shooting happened.
Huh.
And throughout the game, you're dealing with this ability to rewind time, which is used in a lot of interesting ways.
Okay, so that's the hook mechanic.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Both, it's used in a lot of interesting ways thematically and a lot of interesting ways mechanically. And just to give an example that doesn't spoil too much, there is a puzzle at one point where you're trying to get into the administration office at the school you attend to get some information because you think something's being covered up. And you call a friend and get information on how to build a pipe bomb. You go to the science lab and build a pipe bomb.
You play some weird shit, James. I'm actually a little worried about you.
You blow the shit out of the door, which obviously sets off every siren in the building and brings every kind of law enforcement, firefighters, everyone descending on this school. You go inside, you rewind time till before you blew the door up, and then you just open it from the inside so your friend can come in.
So that's a good game, and that's a game you recommend.
Oh, absolutely. The way they make use of time travel and puzzles is so unique and something I've not seen anywhere else.
And how old is this game?
Came out last year.
Okay, so basically this
And
game...
if you're a PS Plus member and you have a PS4, right now it's free. So you can't go wrong. And if you're not, like I said, the first episode is free everywhere to try and get people hooked. And the first episode's, going to be a good 2-3 hours. So
That's what I don't like about
a good
those.
way to get a good way to get a taste.
That's why I don't like those episodic downloads, because the gameplay's too short for me. I need something that I can become involved with for like a month or months.
Yeah,
that's how I like to game. Everyone's different, but yeah,
I like a well-contained story, and I like, especially because that was all finished. I didn't have to wait for a next episode. I hate that. I'm not going to start playing a game if all the episodes aren't out, if it's episodic. But the fact that obviously it was free, and I kind of just started playing it, sort of wondering what this was, and got hooked within half an hour and played through the whole thing this week. And this is one of those games where you can actually see how your choices compared to other people's choices at the end of each chapter.
More and more games like that are coming out.
Yeah.
Not that we saw at E3.
Not so much.
This was one of the most unspectacular...
What did we even see at E3?
Well, we touched on Microsoft's big announcements and Ubisoft's big announcements in last week's episode. This week, we're now able to get into Sony, and that was about it.
Yeah.
Other than like indie mobile games. But Sony was...
We're not going to talk about the PC gaming press conference?
Not at all.
I'm huge into PC gaming. I can't even bring myself to watch that.
Yeah.
Yes. Always too long. Always not that interesting.
Sony just basically announced when games that they had already announced were coming out.
Yeah.
There were no surprises at Sony's presentation except for VR stuff. They went heavy on VR, which is another $350 thing that you have to buy and put on your head.
And will it be compatible with the PS5?
Which, yes, probably not too far behind. So Sony really, they hit a big chord with the Spider-Man game. We actually got to see game footage and gameplay from the Spider-Man game, and it looks dope. Like, it looks awesome, and I really can't wait for it to come out in 2018.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But here's my thing with... that looked amazing.
Amazing Spider-Man.
Yes. Not much else interesting at the Sony conference. My question is, are our expectations of Sony too high now? Have they raised our expectations too high?
They had a great run for like 2 to 3 years right after the launch of the PS4.
Well, we had the PS4 launch, where they came out with the lower price and the no always online, and all this. We're not going to do all the stuff that people were afraid Microsoft was going to do.
And the hardware is pretty incredible.
Yeah, and just kind of mic dropped, and everybody went nuts.
Well, in the years after that, they were revealing good games.
And then they had this isn't huge to you, but it was huge in the community. The year with the announce of the full Final Fantasy VII remake. And the Shenmue 3 coming out, although that one was a little weird because it was a Kickstarter. Those were, people went nuts.
And then No Man's Sky, Zero Dawn. I mean, the hits just kept coming.
And then last year with the orchestra and the big show they put on with the new God of War and
new Uncharted. I mean,
sequel to The Last of Us.
Yep.
Which that was an amazing trailer. We heard nothing about that game
Not
this
a
year.
thing, which is really strange. They were announcing games for 2018.
Were they lackluster, or have they raised the bar too high for themselves?
I think a little bit of both, honestly. Yeah. There wasn't a lot to get excited about because you'd already heard all this. In fact, one of the big applause lines was for DLC.
Yeah.
So, it was a little lackluster, but... only because they did raise the bar.
And there was some talk afterwards that Sony execs didn't want to spend a lot of time talking about things that weren't coming out this year. They didn't want to spend half of their press conference talking about things that may not come out until 2019 or 2020.
But they did it with No Man's Sky, and they did it with Zero Dawn.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. They've done that before. They were trying not to do that this year.
Odd strategy, because those two titles, even though I just lost it. No Man's Sky kind of faltered.
Yeah. Kind of faltered.
Yeah. I never played it, so I can't really say, but
giant shit show.
Yeah, everyone hated it except potheads. Yeah, that faltered, but still, that hype train lasted for 2 years until launch. And the same with Zero Dawn. Hype train for 2 years, and that one actually paid off.
Yeah, but when they gave such an incredibly prominent position to, and again, you don't care about this, but
VR. So much
2
VR.
years ago, when they gave such an incredibly prominent position to the Final Fantasy VII remake, and it could be another 2 years before we see the first episode of what could be what is expected to be an episodic game. How much real estate, how much of your own gravitas do you want to give over to something that people may not see during this console generation?
Yeah. In the same, a truncated Gran Turismo title.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So yeah, E3 was just kind of ho-hum. The more I look at the Assassin's Creed stuff that got a lot of hype last weekend, you start recognizing mechanics from other Ubisoft games in it.
Yeah.
They did not rebuild the game. They just lifted from other properties and put those mechanics into Assassin's Creed.
Specifically what?
You know how you don't have eagle vision now? You have an actual eagle?
Yeah, that was a Far Cry Primal thing.
And Watch Dogs.
Yeah.
Where you had a drone. What was the other? The homing arrows was a Far Cry thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think Assassin's Creed is even all its. I don't think that thing was rebuilt from the ground up.
Yeah.
They may have made some tweaks to the combat system, which desperately needed it. I'm still going to buy it and play it, and I'll enjoy it. But don't call it a building from the ground up when we've played these mechanics before.
Yeah.
They really have done nothing new. What are we all looking forward to next week?
I'm binge watching Arrow and The Flash. They're my CW shows.
Yeah, they went up quick.
Yes, they did. They are on Netflix. Usually they drop on Netflix like 2 weeks before the new season. They're out like now.
Yeah, I was really surprised by that.
Arrow is very strong, and The Flash kind of stumbled.
Yeah.
But I'm still enjoying. I mean, it's still a comic book TV show.
Right. Yeah, it's funny because The Flash is adding new speedsters, where Arrow seems to be eliminating all the archers.
Right.
So it's really strange how those paths kind of converge. But that big crossover event they did, was really
a lot of fun.
Really cool. A lot of fun. Probably the most fun comic book properties in pop culture right now.
I would say so. Yes.
What do you look forward to, James?
Well, God, I still haven't seen Wonder Woman. I'd like to do that at some point. Other than that, I don't know.
I know this sounds like a paid advertisement for Netflix, but so much good content is on it. The Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling is going to premiere next weekend.
I saw that.
And I really want to see where they go with this series. I don't know if it's going to be any good.
It's 80s based, right?
80s based, has Allison Brie, so I'm in. So yeah, I'm really interested to see where that series goes, what the tone is like, and what they're going to do with that story. And it even has Edward.
I know the actual promotion was never good.
No, not at all.
No. I was around for that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we all were. Yeah. God, we're old. Jesus. Yeah, any other news or notes?
No, I would just say that, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you're hearing, please share our links, subscribe on YouTube.
Like the video.
Just help us spread the word. We're having a lot of fun doing this. We're glad that you guys seem to have fun listening. And we would just like to have more people enjoy the love.
Please listen to us.
See, James, this is why you're not allowed to talk.
We don't want to be shouting into a vacuum. It's so sad.
Like everybody else on social media. All right, play us off, James.
No.